Okay, so welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to do a tutorial on how to replace the carburetor on this Ford 801 PowerMaster tractor. I've had trouble with this carburetor. This is a Zenith carburetor replaced back in about 2012. Continually having trouble with the float sticking. So what we're going to do today is go back to what I think is the original design, the Marvell Schebler design. We purchased that carburetor at Steiner Tractor. I had a very good experience with Steiner Tractor, so you might want to check them out if you're buying parts for your tractor. So to begin, we're going to take off. Now this isn't stock. You can tell this has all been added to make this connection here, same here. This is my air tube. So this is my oil-filled air cleaner. The air is going to come in here, going to get filtered in here, and go straight into the carburetor. And what we're going to do is, we're going to take this clamp loose, just enough so that we can take this off. We're actually going to loosen this up here as well. Okay? And then we're going to pull that air cleaner intake off. Alright. Let's pull the fuel line off. That's next. Time out. I know your tractor's different. You know how I know? Because yours is probably stopped. Throughout the trouble we've had with this carburetor, I rerouted the gas lines. You can see right down in between there is where the fuel comes out of the gas tank. And Ford has a nice little metal line that would come out somewhere in this region and then drop down and come in. Well, I figured between the exhaust manifold and the exhaust pipe and the intake manifold that we could possibly be getting a vapor lock in here, and that was part of my trouble because the tractor would be running fine and then suddenly the tractor is starving for gas. You sit there a moment and you crank right up and take off until it does it again. This idea of mine didn't solve that, but it's worked pretty good. So if you want to do that, then run you a rubber fuel line around the back side. I thought it had a better heat shielding here. Get it away from this zone. Don't know if I solved any trouble with that, but yes, your tractor's different and that's why. For me though, I'm going to go ahead and take this hose off. Now you got to be careful when you're doing this because yours may be full of gas. I've already shut the gas off on mine. That's why I'm not having a big mess of fuel right now. But be careful when you do that. You can have a nice fuel mess everywhere. I'm going to take mine and pull it back and set these two back out of the way. Just want to tuck it out so you got plenty of room to work with. Next, right back here, you see this line here? This is my choke. When you pull that, the butterfly moves and it chokes down the motor. That helps you crank it when it's cold. Here's how we take that off. This nice little fitting here. You grab that fitting, you're gonna push that forward and then out. Forward and then out, off of that ball. Just let it stay right down there. We have the same fitting on our throttle. And what we're gonna do is, we're gonna push this fitting forward and then out. And then set it down. Next thing we're gonna work with here. Gonna get out my trusty, hey, do you have a set of these? If you've seen a set of these or remember them from the 1980s, then put in the comments. This is actually a Central Hardware Master Service 11-piece combination wrench set. Look, it's even got the little Central Hardware guy. Not impressed? I am. We're gonna be taking these two nuts off. I'm gonna say that's a 9/16. Yep. Y'all, I get excited about the old stuff. All right, next thing you're gonna do is remove these nuts and the lock washers with it. Gently pull this down. The studs should stay in your carburetor. In the box, we're gonna have the Marvell Schebler carburetor, original style glass bowl. This is the filter bowl that filters the gas before it goes into the carburetor. I wouldn't have bought this because there was nothing wrong with my other one, but this was required with the Marvell Scheblers. Beware of that. If you're swapping from a Zenith back to Schebler, it's going to require that bowl, which will also require a different fuel nut. That's this FDS 2620 and the FDS 1785 gasket. And of course, this is the gasket that goes between the intake manifold and the carburetor itself. There's this nice little feature with Steiner. If you spend so much, they give you discounts. The discount covered the additional filtration and bolts and things. Side by side, you can see the Marvell Schebler is more bowlish and short, and the Zenith is more shallow and long. That's the way I call that. But we have a lot of the same features otherwise. This one, of course, has the filter plastic bowl on it. This one has not been installed yet. Looking through here, the butterflies are the same. I do have the actual TSX 813 Marvell Schebler tag. This is a new carburetor, so this is a new old stock or a rebuilt old style carburetor. Here's the back side. You see we've got our linkages in the right position. This would be your idle screw here. This one is set by spring. This one is set by just a screw with a lock nut, looks like, or a series, looks like, between here of what it screws through, whereas that one, the spring will hold it. All right, so we've got to remove these studs and put them on the new carburetor. So let's go to the vise and get them off. We're going to be very gentle with this. We want it to hold firm, but we don't want to bust it to pieces because we might want to rebuild this at some point and use it again. We'll start with these vice grips. Going to get as close to the bottom of the stem as possible so as not to booger up any threads that are going to be used. All right, so you notice we've got the fine threads here, and then at the bottom we have the coarse threads that go into the carburetor. And my hope is that the Marvell Schebler carburetor has the same threads. All right, we're sliding. So I'm having trouble getting this to budge and it's starting to score. So to the rescue, mouse milk. Muscle and a hustle. Let's put a couple of drops of that in there. Pull our gasket off. All right, and let's put it doesn't take much. We're gonna take the original nuts that came off of here, and here. We're gonna drop this nut down, all the way down. Then we're gonna put lock washer and another nut. We said that was a 9/16. We're gonna drop this all the way down, bottom it out. Yeah, there we go. Now let's get some more bite on this one. Tighten it in the carburetor as well. Now let's see if we can back it all out. All we need is for that to get loose. And see how that loosens it up here when you pull on this one. All right, now we need to get this out, and to do that, let's grab this nut and then loosen these two. Okay, so there's a little trick for you if you've got a stud stuck in something that you can't get out. Works very nicely. All right, so as you can see here, we have both of our studs out, including the one that we scored with the vice grips. And let's see if we can get these studs to work in the Marvell Schebler. Hopefully they have exactly the same threads. I'm just gonna wipe off the intake manifold. We don't want any dirt. The way this works is it's an updraft, so the fuel air mixture from the carburetor is going to be sucked into this intake and dispersed to one of the 4 cylinders. So I'm going to put these studs in the same placement that they were before. I believe that this one that was scarred was on the same end with the intake, so we'll slide that down in there, and it did thread up nicely. So apparently these were both built with the same thread and studs in mind. We know that these work with these holes already. I'm just putting those in by hand, snugging them up. Let's go ahead and take our gasket, put that down there. And with that, let's go ahead and mount our carburetor. Being careful not to scar threads. We want everything to seat well. Hold it up there. Go ahead and slide your lock washer. You know why it's called a lock washer? It's cut right there and it's spring loaded. So when you put it on there and you tighten the nut down, that spring loaded action helps keep this nut here from vibrating loose. Okay, finger tight. Here's our other lock nut. We're going to set it down right there. Okay. I am just going to snug this up. Notice I'm alternating sides. I didn't just torque this down with a power wrench or something and get it snugged into place. The object is that you don't want air to suck in this ridge. That's why the gasket's there. And you want it to be somewhat tight. But listen, don't over tighten this. You just want to snug it up evenly. Notice my distance of the threads here is about the same. On this side, a little less on this one. Starting to feel pretty tight. I'm snug all the way around. I don't have the spec. I don't know how tight. What I'm going to say is you're just going to get in there, and when it's snug, you're just going to kind of give it like 1/8 of a turn. And you want to try to put the same resistance on both sides. This one's higher than that one. I'm seeing that. But I'm still after that same amount of resistance. Okay, and it's about right there. So I can move the whole tractor from it. I'm tight and sealed, but I'm not over tightened. In reverse order, let's go next with our throttle cable. You remember how we talked about pulling these out? There's a little bit of a spring in here, and what we're going to do is we're going to pull this out to free up that cavity there, and then we're just going to connect it. So, all right, in this case, my cable is a little bit on the short side. How do you remedy that, you might ask? Easy, my son. You just adjust the throttle cable. And now it's more than long enough. Slide that on, adjust the throttle cable back up. Bada bing, bada boom. Same thing with the choke cable. Push that out, slide it over the ball, let go, make sure they're both tight and secure, and there you go. There's our choke. All right, this filtration device is next. We're gonna grab our gasket and our bolt, take those out. Notice it has holes in it right there and there. Designed to have fuel pass through it. It's hollow. This is one of the reasons it's more expensive. It's not just an everyday bolt. Let's look at our old carburetor and make sure we put the gasket in the right end. So the gasket is on the outside here, and it looks like it has one on the inside. I failed to get the extra gasket, but look, we can salvage this whole thing right now. You might ask yourself, why didn't I use this bolt? And this would answer the question of why you had to buy another one. Look at the size difference. This one's much bigger. No, but the gasket should fit. Let's see. Uh-oh, that's not gonna work. Okay, so I've looked around in the shop, and what I've come up with is this O-ring here. This is clearly a metal type of gasket with some rubber on it. This one's bent. We're gonna go with this. This is the fat one, and because this is so thin, I chose to go with the smaller one. I already have it on right here. So let's go with these two first. See if the O-ring does the job we need it to do. You'll know it's not doing the job you need it to do if it leaks. So I'm gonna put the O-ring on the outside. We'll put the OEM spec gasket on the inside and go ahead and start threading that guy up like that. Next, this is our gas pickup line. Take that off the old one. Hopefully it will thread up on the new one. All right, that is not working. I have us a new problem here. So our pickup line is of a larger body and thread than what I have here in this compression nut. See, it just swims in there, so it doesn't fit. In our haste here, I've failed to purchase the correct size. This fitting fits on this right here, thread size and all, and it's a little bit different and smaller than this one, but went down the street over here at the local parts house, Walnut Parts. They hooked me up with the right fitting. 1/2-inch wrench. This is just aluminum. You do not want to over tighten this. The goal is for it to be secure and for it to not leak. So we're just going to leave that just a little loose so we get our angle right once it's in. Pull this gasket off. You see we have our rubber O-ring right down there. Slide through. Put in the OEM spec gasket, and then see about threading this into the new carburetor. That's a 5/8. All right, so we can go ahead and tighten this one down. The same rule applies. You do not want to over tighten this stuff, y'all, and yet it needs to be snug. So we're just gonna snug that up. Yeah, I like it right in there. For me, I could tell you what that foot-pound torque is if that's important to you. You will want to look up a manual and get the exact number, but that one's going to work for me. Now notice right in here, the housing is touching the carburetor. I want this as true vertical as possible. I did notice that's touching, and I don't know if that can be, if anything can be done about that. I think that's just going to have to be lived with. Back to our gas intake. So let's go ahead and run our hose along, okay? I'm just going to set that back in here. I'm going to want to route it just right, but before I do, let's get our intake hose installed. Because I have it zip tied, and I want all this in place correctly before I connect my hose, because length and angle matters. So let's go ahead now. I like my setup here. Let's tighten this up. Good and tight there. Why is this important? Well, we don't want this carburetor to be sucking air from a non-filtered source. Even if you're just mowing with these tractors, they can generate a lot of dust and dirt, and this fan is blowing air this way. So if it's blowing a lot of dust across here and then it picks up inside this tube and gets inside that carburetor, well, you can imagine it's going to mess things up. Let's go ahead and seat that. See that gap? I want to seat that a little better. Let's go with that. I think I can live with that. Now we're going to revisit our fuel back here. You can see back behind me that because of the linkage and because I have redirected the fuel line, this could potentially be a problem whereby the fuel line is in the way of choking the vehicle, choking the tractor, or in the way of the throttle and acceleration. So we want this line to be as out of the way as possible. And so I'm going ahead, like I said before, and left this loose enough so that we can make final adjustments. So let's go ahead now and connect our fuel line to our new fitting. Put my hands behind that and finding the optimum screwdriver position. Then let's tighten down the clamp. My suggestion would be to get this as tight as you can without ruining the hose. See what I mean about pitch? So I'm having to turn that because it's wanting to get down there where I can't get in with the screwdriver. Get it tight so it doesn't leak. Double check that it doesn't leak. Make sure that when you're finished with your project that you don't have any leaks. How can you tell if you have an air leak? Not as important from a safety perspective, but spray a little starting fluid around here while it's running. If it suddenly revs up, then you have a leak. Fuel, it's going to be obvious. You're going to see it. You're going to smell it if it's a problem. So make sure you don't have a leak on your rig. All right. We're going to go to our 1/2 inch on my fitting and tighten this up. Seating this where it's good and firm against this aluminum without breaking the aluminum, right? So I'm just going to gently snug this up. My goal here is to have a fitting that is snug and it doesn't leak, right? I'm double checking my route. If you've got a good line of sight here, you notice I've got my fuel line here, got my choke here. My choke is working just fine, right? My zip tie, do all the zip tie things I need to do. Let's make sure it's not messing with my idle screw and that my acceleration works. Okay. It feels smooth to me. What does it look like to you? Yeah, I think it works. Okay, so that does it. The Marvell Shebler carburetor is installed. This is an easy project for you to do. So if you have one of these old tractors sitting and the block is most likely in good shape, you don't have any ring trouble, you got good compression in your cylinders, check your fuel system. All right, so if you liked this video and found this content to be helpful, then be sure to like or subscribe to our channel and maybe share this to someone else who could benefit from it. Put your comments down there. We respond to as many of those as we can. Thanks again for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day.